and welcome to our new episode of Ask the Accountant. We have cool friends. And in this episode, we're back in Brewdog yet again. Peter Crouch will not be beating us to this one. We're going to get there before everyone else. And we have the coolest of cool friends, Sam. Sam, do you want to first of all give a bit of introduction? Who you are, where you are, why you are, and everything else. And then, yeah, we can go from there.
Of course. Thank you very much. Don't know about the coolest of cool, Aaron, but thank you for that. So my name's Sam Mitcham. I run a small practice on the Lancashire-Yorkshire border, SJCM Accountancy, set up in 2019, myself and a couple of members of staff, and we're up at 220 clients-ish.
Nice. And most people probably know you from a little thing called LinkedIn. Is that fair to say?
Possibly. We might have been seen on there once or twice.
And also, you'd probably say as well that you've kind of getting yourself a curly whirly every now and again. How's that been going for you?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'll be honest, I don't track anything in terms of, followers, that side of LinkedIn. I never track. You'll notice when you've got a bit of an influx of new followers, but apart from that, genuinely don't look at the numbers. So when that kind of leaderboard started appearing, I was a bit like, wow, okay. So, yeah. I haven't been sent a curly whirly yet, though. How do I get one? I haven't actually received one.
I've been promised one for last month's performance, but I've not received it yet.
So you've not got
I've not actually had a curly whirly.
First controversy of the podcast then. Yeah. Okay, let's start
We'll be having words.
Let's start the podcast as we always do. Let's go properly introduction in terms of how you got to where you are. Let's have a bit of a backstory. Let's start why accountancy in the first place? Why start your own firm? Let's have the story of Sam Mitcham.
The story of Sam Mitcham. Okay, so I'll do the cliche of it was never my aim to be an accountant. I just fell into this. No, in all honesty, so I dropped out of A-levels after the first year, much to my father's dismay, because I was working in a pub and I thought, well, I could earn a lot of money here. And tips were doing all right, Bought my first Ford Fiesta with cash from tips. And basically decided, right, I'm going to go do that. And whilst I decide what I want to do, the bookkeeper for the chain of pubs, there were 7 pubs, I think, in the chain, and the bookkeeper kind of spotted me and said, I think you should be in the office with me. So that happened. And then within, I think it was only 6 months, that bookkeeper handed his notice in. So before I knew it, I was kind of doing the payroll for 7 pubs, trying to grapple through using what was Sage 50 then, and do the bookkeeping for this chain of pubs. So from there, the pubs actually went under. That was nothing to do with my bookkeeping, just going to point that out. So the pubs went under, and from there, I'd just met a few people in the kind of bookkeeping world, I suppose, and there was an opportunity for an apprenticeship at a firm in Hebden Bridge. So I was put forward for that, had a casual chat and was offered the job on the spot, so landed that one. Did 5 years there. And then I went on maternity leave, had my daughter, so that'll have been 2012. I'd done my AAT by that point. And then when I went back after mat leave, it just wasn't quite the firm for me anymore. So then I moved on to a smaller firm, also in Hebden Bridge, did another 5 years there with an accountant called Richard Fitton. So much respect for him, taught me most of what I know. I was very much his right-hand woman for 5 years, had a great time and learnt a lot. From there, knew I wanted to start up my own firm, but I didn't want to step on the toes of Richard, who'd done so much for me over the 5 years. So I took a 1-year contract for a bigger firm over in Burnley who had basically left MTD VAT far too late. So they were in a pickle, to put it politely. So I went in and blasted that out, basically, got all the clients for them onto software. Meanwhile, in the background was slowly but surely setting up my own firm, which they knew about. So it was all kind of, there was nothing kind of hidden there. And that, I think, brings me to 2019, 2020, when I was setting up. And then from there, honestly, just can't believe how well it's gone. I mean, I think we're all to the realisation that there are plenty of clients out there. And if anything, we're in such high demand, aren't we? So I think that is the story, start to finish.
I mean, I've got a question now. We need to go back to this car that you've brought using tips.
Yep.
Obviously, big character question here. Were the tips subject to tax?
No, they were not. No, they were not. There was no trunk master. I think that's the right term, isn't it? Yeah. Is that what we're supposed to do? And there was no tax paid on those tips. So if anyone would like to come after me for my £700 saved up tips, they're more than welcome to.
Anyway, so yeah.
Well, I thought she was really ethical, but now...
Obviously,
Maybe not at 17 years old.
it's all different now, right?
Yeah.
All different now.
All different now.
So your firm then, because we have to put our hat off to you in terms of the growth and what you've built. And what I think most people resonate when they kind of see your story and they listen to you on stages and stuff, and we'll talk about that later. But I think a lot of people know it's you and your brand, and you've built your brand. So where have you got to with it now? How many staff have you got, et cetera, et cetera? And you've got a location as well, haven't you? Because it looks amazing every time you're on a Zoom call or whatever. It looks brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah, so I got the office. I think I'll have been there, about a year and a half, I think, since I've had the actual office. So it's myself and 2 staff members. Firstly, I took on bookkeeper/admin, and now I've got an accountant as well. So it is just still myself and 2 staff members. I got the office mainly for client meetings, to be honest. I think it's very different when you're acting for somebody that you used to act for in a previous employment, so you kind of know them, and then it's somebody from the local shop, and it's like all these people coming into your house, to your home office is all well and good. There isn't really the facility where I live for, like temporary desk, whatever you call those. We don't have those without me travelling into the city, by which point it wouldn't be worth it. So got the office for that reason. Staff are flexible working, so they can work from wherever they want to. They choose not to work with me in the office. I'm not trying not to take it personally, but they really don't ever appear in the office. No, to be honest, they both live like a good 40 minutes to an hour either side. They've got young kids as well, and it's just better that way. So yeah, that's where I'm at with office and staff.
Lovely. And is it like on the high street or something? It looks like because the way you position your camera, you kind of almost see to the front door almost. And it seems to be quite busy.
Yeah, it is. Although because of client demand, I haven't actually branded up the front of the office building at all. The office is in Littleborough, which is like the next small town along from where I live. Just because that was a really nice office, so that's the only reason that I'm based there. But I haven't branded up the front. Okay. So it is a case of the clients that know that they're coming for a meeting or a new prospect client, I'll send them the Loom video that shows them where to go, but there isn't a massive sign because I would want walk-ins at some point, and that'd be lovely to be that high street accountant because I am doing the whole humanity piece and I think that would be a really nice vibe. But at the moment, like I say, the staff aren't in the office, and for me to be working away at something and somebody come in just because it says accountancy practice wouldn't be ideal.
Yeah, it's all about getting the right people in there at that point, isn't it? So you kind of touched on your software journey at the beginning there, and you talked about the fact that for you start with Sage Line 50, which I don't think you did, Johann, but I certainly was a Sage Line 50 baby. That was my pride and joy at one point. Some of us left Sage Line 50 and went on to, we'll just say other things for now. Let's keep it nice and calm. But you decided to stay loyal to Sage. And how's that been going for you? Well, why? What was it in the first place? What was the reason for you to kind of jump wholeheartedly into the Sage bandwagon?
Yeah, so like I said, my first experience of bookkeeping was on Sage 50. And then the first practice I did 5 years at, they quite heavily used Sage 50 as well. It was that time, that was what was going on there still, up until 2012. And then when I went to Fittons, he was very, very forward thinking with tech. I mean, he was always up for starting to look at what was going on with cloud, which was obviously brilliant for my career. And because we were transitioning mainly from Sage 50, we thought we'd give Sage Cashbooks a run for its money and see what that was all about. And it was a disaster. So then we started kind of backtracking and started putting clients onto, I think it was Xero. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Xero. But Sage we had relationships with them, and we had strong relationships. So I think people think that me doing kind of bits of filming for Sage and webinars is quite a new thing, but it's not. There are actually videos from, I think, like 2013, 2014, a case study out there somewhere on YouTube. Don't look it up, please. So we kind of stuck with them. We decided to stick with them because we had those relationships. So throughout that employment, we did follow them through on the journey. And in honesty, we stuck with them because the discounts they offered us at the time were a no-brainer. Like the amount that was in the kind of realms of bundle buy, wasn't it? We were all buying like 1,000 licenses for 99p or whatever. So we went with it, and then we kind of said from the start, well, we don't want to be switching and changing. Yeah, it's not perfect, but clients will get wound up. So we just did that. So then, for me, then setting up my own firm, it was the software that I had the most knowledge of. But also, I had those relationships. So for me, that meant more than, okay, it's not been the best product at all times. They have been slow on certain things. But I'm not a Sage-only practice, and I think that's probably, it probably appears that way. But we're not a Sage-only practice. So if a client comes through the door, they're using Xero, QuickBooks, Free Agent, any software, if they're 100% happy on their software, I'll leave them well alone. And in the same respect, to be honest, I've got some that have come in without software, and I've said, do you know what? You're going to be better on QuickBooks or Xero for whatever reason it is. Like for me, it's all about being honest with the client. I'm not there to sell Sage. I'm there to serve my clients. And it seems to work well. I will say the only downside to that is obviously now that I am taking on staff, we can't all be experts in all softwares. Yeah. And I think that's probably the downside of not being 100% to one software. But for me, Sage, okay, we can all admit that sometimes the products have lacked, but it is about that support piece. And I've always felt that the support is a lot better.
And I think that's, like, we are not QuickBooks only, either of our firms, but that is where we've got our relationship.
Yeah.
And, if Sage put effort in, or if Free Agent put effort in, or if Xero put effort in to build those relationships with us, then we'd be even more inclined to promote, I've got a team, and I always say to clients when they come to me, we want to use Xero. It's like, that's fine. We don't have the same relationship with Xero. Xero don't have the same support lines as QuickBooks or Free Agent, where I can ring and go, this is my problem.
Yep.
Meaning I can't deliver to you the same level of service as I can potentially deliver to the guy that's referred you to me, because they are on QuickBooks in my case, or Sage in your case. And I think it's just being open and transparent about that, so you can manage their expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think a lot of bookkeepers and accountants tell us, they always say, oh, this software's rubbish, that software's rubbish. Actually, what's rubbish about it? Not got any support. Have you tried to build a relationship with them?
Yeah.
No, that's their job. No, it's a relationship. It's a two-way street. And your relationship with Sage is only as good as it is because you give back to them.
Yeah.
And you give your time to them, and you speak to them, you feed back to them, and then they feed back to you.
Yeah, exactly that.
And
yeah.
I think a lot of people, it just shows you don't have to have a relationship with software for years and years and years. But you can start building one today, and you will get a better product, a better service out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I think for you as well, isn't it fair to say with your type of client, Sage is quite a nice fit as well, isn't it? Quite industry-based and CIS and everything else.
Yeah,
they've nailed that from day one, right?
They have nailed that from day one. Yeah, I do act for quite a lot of subcontractors and contractors, and I act for quite a few now that have started off as subcontractors, and now they're building their own businesses. And you've got two lads that used to be subbies that are now got 20-25 lads working under them, and they're smashing it. And it's quite difficult for them. They're so new to business. And I personally feel like the way we've got that set up, the CIS product works fantastically on Sage. They did absolutely nail that from day one. But those clients have very little to do with the software. Yeah. They raise their sales invoices. That's it. They have to make sure the CIS reverse charge is on. Apart from that, that's pretty much their bit done. So it doesn't really matter to me that actually, there might be a competitor that's a bit easier for the client to use on an app or whatever, because they're not doing any of that. And I act for a lot of different types of businesses, but it's very rare that somebody does come back and say, I'm really not getting on well with this software. Like I said, if I felt a different one was better for them, then I would be honest about that.
Yeah. And I think what Sage has done well, and we said this when Chris was on the show, right? They have, like, if we were going to start a practice now, it'd be very difficult not to consider Sage. They've got the ecosystem, right? They can sell you the dream of you having a practice where you can do everything from one piece of software, and that's got to be quite exciting, right? And it gives you opportunity to grow the firm.
Absolutely, yeah, and that was what I wanted from day one, and obviously it wasn't available then, but that was what I was kind of shouting for from the start. It's that kind of integrated end-to-end piece, and I think it is very difficult to find, as we all know. But I totally agree with you. If I was doing it all again from today, whether I was a Sage user before or not, I would definitely consider Sage for Accountants, because they are packaging up that startup piece. You might then go on and realise, actually, I need a bit more from a personal tax product or whatever. You might, but it's a good starting point, isn't it?
Yeah, and it can scale with you, and I
Exactly.
think that's important. And they're exciting because normally, once every X amount of months, we're talking about Sage acquiring this or Sage acquiring that or Sage looking at this, and they seem to have found a way to be able to go, right, let's find what they need, what's best in class, and acquire them and build there. And that's for you, because we're building our practices based on whatever software we've put our hat on, right? And that can actually sometimes determine how fast you grow and how successful your practice is. And knowing that you kind of back the right horse has got to be good as well, hasn't it?
It has, yeah, because there's other areas of software where I have backtracked, and we all know how painful that is. It's terrifying, isn't it, to switch anything once you've committed. It's absolutely terrifying, because you've not only got internally, you've got that decision to make, then you've got to tell staff. If it's client-facing product, you've then got to go through it all with clients, and nobody likes change, and you can tell them, especially staff, it's like, we're going to switch this to this, and they're like, oh, I've just got you. And as much as you can tell them, look, it's going to be better, just give it time. It's, nobody likes change. They like just doing what they do, and they get used to it, don't they?
Definitely. So your relationship with Sage, I'm going to make an assumption here. I assume that's why you've been able to get so successful in the speaking rings, and you've been able to have those opportunities to go. For us, if we look at a conference on and your name's not on there, there's question marks like, what's happened here? Like, is she poorly that day, or is she on holiday?
Sage isn't going.
Yeah, exactly. But I know it's not just that. It's your brand, your talent as well, for being able to be on stage and be able to do. What was what advice have you got to people who are looking to get in that kind of talking industry? Is it trying, again, I'm making assumptions, you'll tell me if I'm right or wrong, is it trying to get with those partners to help them on the wrong, or is there some other magic way to people to start wanting to talk?
I think it is all about putting yourself out there as a personality and as a real personality. I've always kind of said there's no point pretending to be something that you're not on social media, whether that's pretending to be a bigger business than you are or pretending to be a different person. The way I see it is that my personality on LinkedIn is I think quite similar to the personality that they kind of get, if anybody asks me to speak. You are correct in a respect that it was because of Sage that I've had a lot of the opportunities I've had. So my account manager, Kevin Brown, who's been my account manager way back to those other employments, and I've had to fight quite hard with Sage to keep him because they wanted to move areas, and I just spat my dummy out a bit. He kind of gave me the first. There's posters. I know plenty of the listeners probably seen my head far too big on a banner at some point, which I absolutely detest that picture, but people love to tell me that they used to have it in their office. And we did a case study. That was many years ago. And then the first speaking slot I did with Sage after that case study was an MTD VAT. And again, I think it was my account manager. I think they'd had somebody cancel on them. In Manchester, and my account manager went, you should ask, I've got Sam Mitcham, who's one of mine, and she'd do it, I reckon, with a day's notice. I've never done any public speaking before. So I turned up, really quite nervous, and that's where I met Chris Downing from Sage. And to be honest, we absolutely smashed it. It was us two and HMRC. I was nervous, and if I watched it back now, I'd probably absolutely cringe, but to say the situation, I had absolutely no notice, to prepare. It went really well. And I think that it's first impression, isn't it? So first impression, and then it was like, oh, well, maybe we could ask Sam again. And it did start kind of coming through. And then I think probably a shout out to Accounting Web, to be honest, in terms of they asked me to do quite a lot of webinars quite early on. And that was on the back end of me putting out my Tax Tip Tuesday series on LinkedIn, which I committed to posting every Tuesday for 52 weeks, which was very hard at times. But it just kept it kept me out there. And at the end of the day, if they want you to speak on their webinars, they need to see you speaking in a respect. So that's why I did the Tax Tip Tuesday. And again, if I watch them back now, I absolutely cringe. But that's part of growth, isn't it? That's part of how we learn. And I think you've just got to, if anybody that wants to get into that kind of space, you've just got to start putting out whatever it is you want to do. I always saw myself as potentially doing a bit more technical speaking rather than what I've ended up doing. But then in hindsight, I love what I have ended up doing because it's all opinion based. I've just run a webinar actually for CPD Store that was heavily tax technical. And it was so difficult because I'm not just speaking like I am with you guys now about my opinion. It's like, I can't say something wrong here. This is like big stuff. Like, I look at the likes of Rebecca Bennyworth and think, wow, imagine doing that one day. Imagine being that walking tax Bible. I did one webinar and I was like traumatized from it. I'd do it again and I enjoyed it. The amount of like just the prep and the notes that you have to make sure that you're absolutely like nailed on with what you're saying was really high pressure. So I'd say, anybody thinking of getting into it, have a very serious think about which way you want to go. Do you want to talk about your experiences or do you want to go down the technical route? That said, personally, I feel like we've got a gap in the technical speaking when the likes of Benny when one day they're going to step out.
She's announced retirement from accounting.
Has she?
They're
There
advertising
you go.
her role.
Wow.
At the moment. She'll do the occasional article from retirement, but she is stepping down, and that's a huge loss to our industry.
It's a huge loss, and I can't see many coming up that are doing that. So I think
it's
there's
not even the technical bit that worries me on Accounting Web. It's having the psychological resilience to deal with the, in effect, trolling in the comments. I was reading one of Rebecca's articles about the advice she's giving on MTD to HMRC and how to redo things. There's like 80 odd comments on there, and like Richard, the chief editor's having to jump to Rebecca's defense in there, saying, look, stop, this isn't Rebecca, this is her opinion, or this is HMRC. Like it's just brutal on there.
Yeah.
So not only do you have to have this huge technical knowledge, but then have the resilience, the mental resilience to accept that it's just people venting their anger at issues and frustrations at change. So I think A, we're losing a technical expert in our industry, but B, I think they're going to struggle to replace anyone.
Yeah.
And unless Sam, you want to go up to the plate?
I don't think I would have that in me. I mean, she's an absolute legend, isn't she?
Accountex. She had a huge stage at Accountex, one of the first sessions, and it was standing room only. Like the crowds were backing onto the other stands. Like the following she has is phenomenal.
It's so impressive, isn't it?
And it's all through respect.
I was just gonna say, and I didn't want to say it to sound disrespectful. The only way I can put this is, who else can go on a webinar and draw stickmen on a slide deck and it be the best webinar we've all watched all year?
Yep.
It is such valuable content. It doesn't matter that there's a graph that's hand drawn with, that's the beauty in it for me. It actually, I find it quite comical at times. I'm like, that's brilliant, just like the simplicity, because it doesn't need fancy slides at all because of the value.
I think when you mentioned there about your very first one was that 1 day notice, I think that's quite important for people to realise, because I think one of the problems I've seen with people is they're over preparing.
Yeah.
And it gets under their skin, doesn't it? And
and
it becomes, for them, they don't get a chance to enjoy it or anything. It just consumes them. So maybe that was kind of, for you, was the best start to it for you.
Yeah, potentially. I think you're probably right there. Yeah, there's nothing worse than over preparing, because I think you get yourself in like a nervous hole and then it's really hard to get back out. And I think as well, if we are focusing on opinion based, I mean, obviously that first one I did, MTD VAT, there was a bit of technical, but we had HMRC there. Like anything I'd have said wrong, she'd have corrected me pretty quick. Yeah. So I was being asked more about my experience. Well, we live and breathe our own experiences, so it's not difficult. And I think the thing is, people just need to not worry, because if they've been asked to speak about their experiences, that's what people want to hear. Like, you don't need to over-engineer that. That's how I see it.
Yeah, 100%. So you talked about Tax Tip Tuesdays, which I think is one of the things that people know you the most for. And I think if you think kind of parallel to us, how we kind of got into speaking gigs and talking in these sort of shows, it was Ask the Expert for us, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ask the Expert. Yeah, Ask the Expert QuickBooks. And I feel like Tax Tips Tuesday is kind of inspired. Like I think Ask the Expert was inspired by your thing to start doing that. What kind of got the idea off the run in, and tell us a story, because I know there's a nice story around that now, is it, of what's happened with it now and everything else. So where did it come from and what's it become now?
Yeah, so I decided that LinkedIn was the way I wanted to kind of push the business. I'd focused on Facebook and Instagram locally to get myself like known as an accountant in kind of my local area. But I thought, right, let's push this out a bit further onto LinkedIn, obviously with in the back of my head that I wanted to do some speaking events and stuff like that as well. So I actually did a full series of Motivational Monday, Tax Tip Tuesday, Workout Wednesday, Throwback Thursday, and Feel Good Friday. I'm surprised I can still remember that. It was in 2021, I think. Yeah, 21. So what I kind of kept coming across is that to be successful on any social media platform, really, it has to be consistent, especially if you're trying to build a personal brand. And so I thought, I know how my brain works. The only way I'm going to keep 100% consistent is if I commit. Because if I commit, I ain't going back. I mean, Tax Tip Tuesday by week 49, we're talking about inheritance tax. That's desperate times. Like, nobody wants to talk about that ever. So I knew I'd have to commit to it. And then every week, the other posts, obviously, I was doing on the other days were really easy. But Tax Tip Tuesday, it started off very, very simple. And it was like, right, okay, I can write about this and that and that. By weeks 40 to 52, I'm like clutching at straws. You would think that there's a lot more to go at. But I enjoyed it. Let's face it, it's a bit of CPD as well, because I'm having to research every subject, and then I'm going to have to ask somebody to check it over for me before I put it out online. So it was just for that consistency piece, really, and it worked. Like I still get... I put them all onto YouTube, and it was after I'd done the LinkedIn series. I work with a guy called Mike who does any video editing and things like that for me. And he said, let's just whack these on a YouTube channel. Like, you've got nothing to lose. And there's certain ones now. It's a capital gains tax one. And it's actually a little bit out of date now because it talks about the 30-day return. And obviously it's not 30 days anymore. And the rates will be wrong now as well. But that video alone has had more traction than the whole of the other videos. So I think if somebody was to actually look at what I did there, who wanted to be successful and wanted to build, there's a lot to be said for it, because you could look through the series and see which ones are being watched by the general public on YouTube. So by the end of Tax Tip Tuesday, I was like, well, this has worked. Like, I'm actually getting like kind of known for doing this. This is brilliant. I didn't want to continue it myself because I felt like I'd have to rinse and repeat, which obviously you could do because things change so quickly in tax. But I thought at some point people are going to get bored of me talking about what the personal allowance is, like if they've seen that video last year. So I handed it over to Emma, who unfortunately couldn't continue with it. So it didn't actually happen how I wanted it to, because she changed employment. She's now working for Rachel. But yeah, so I was able to hand it over to somebody else, and she was quite early on in her career. And she was like really, really humbled by it. It was as if I was giving her like a massive gift. I was like, it's literally just saying, I don't own it anyway, I don't have any rights to it, but I just said, if you want to do it, I'll support you and I'll help you. So she did do a few, and she did really well. But that was nice because I thought, well, she could then hand it on to someone else, like a bit of a legacy of Tax Tip Tuesday. And I did notice that there was a few people that did a similar thing afterwards as well. So it is nice. There's a couple of people that said to me like I really inspired them, which is amazing for me because I see myself as sort of like low-key, small-time, but you don't see sometimes the impact that you've actually had.
Awesome. And I think that would safe to say that's kind of where you've got most success from LinkedIn from, isn't it? Again, you said consistency, and that's key. I mean, you two are the LinkedIn people in this conversation. I've still only got my nana on mine, so it's fine. She likes it, it's fine. But I think like, what was it that drew you to LinkedIn? Because I'll always remember in my like starting this whole social media campaigns and all this, that, and the other, and sitting down and looking at what my plan was going to be. And LinkedIn, I was completely wrong, but LinkedIn to me, I was like, I wouldn't want to do that. Like, why would I? I don't get any clients out of that. There's this all I'm talking to are fellow accountants and everything else. How did you what was it that made you go and see what everyone else wasn't seeing, basically? What was it that kind of made you go, actually, LinkedIn, that's where I should be?
I think for me, it was about I could see a change in LinkedIn, and I had always been on there, but quite a dormant profile. And I could see that change coming, and I was kind of going on now and then and thinking, hold on, there's some actual human beings on LinkedIn all of a sudden, instead of just like the typical kind of business people that are looking for a new role, or, you know. So I thought, well, Tax Tip Tuesday series, it did actually go out on my Facebook and Instagram as well.
Okay.
So I was covering all platforms with it. But in my head, I was thinking, well, I can't see anybody on LinkedIn that's doing anything like this. It's either going to absolutely flop, or it's gonna work. It's going to get me the speaking opportunities, and it's going to bring me clients, which it did, to be honest. I've got quite a few clients from LinkedIn. I think if you look at it in terms of the number, I can't just remember how many actually, but there's not a great deal of initial clients coming from LinkedIn. But what's happened is I've got now a client came from LinkedIn. For some reason, they seem to be my highest referring on clients.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Probably just a coincidence, but there's one that I can think of, and I've literally got like another dozen clients that have, like when you kind of spider web it off and work out where you've got these people from. So it did work for me. And to be honest as well, it just intrigued me. I was like, who are these people? Who are these people on this platform called LinkedIn? Let's go and, let's go see what they're all about. It was just intriguing for me.
I love it. And I think as well, one of the things that, again, it's all about your personal brand, right? And I think that's what you push so well. People see Sam Mitcham online, and then they meet you in person. It's like for like, right? That's not always the case on these social platforms. It's safe to say. But one of the things I think for me that was most humbling, I think, and it was one of those ones that really set me aside in terms of how you see and perceive and how you kind of built your personal brand, is how honest you are. Like you've openly said before how one of your biggest fears when you post on social media is that, well, yeah, your peers can see it, maybe your family can see it, that's fine, but what about if your clients see it? And what if that client's waiting for XYZ from you and you're over in digital accounting show that we've just done, or whatever it's going to be?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the bit that really sets you apart, I think, because it's that honesty there, and it's not trying to paint this green, grass is always greener sort of mentality, is it? It is, I'm Sam and here I am.
Yeah.
Is that, do you think that's fair? Do you think that's where people resonate with it?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I have taken it after the Tax Tip Tuesday series kind of finished. I was like, right, well, I need to carry on the kind of, what can I do here? And I thought, without making it too strategic, let's just tell the story as it is. And every time, I have like the notes app on my phone. It's something that I always advise people that struggle with content, where anything and everything that you do that could be a future post on social media, just make a note of it. And then you can like retell that story at a time that suits. You're totally right about the honesty piece. And again, I think it was just because I spotted a little bit of a gap, and I thought, like, this is really hard. Like, everyone knows starting a business is hard, but this is like, you've stepped out of, often, you're starting your own accountancy practice, you've stepped out of a world where you can just shout over to the tax office and ask them for some advice, or, oh dear, I've messed this payroll up, what am I going to do with that? And all of a sudden all that's ripped away from you. It's a bit like a child for the first time leaving home at like 18 or whatever, it's like you think everything's going to be fine, and then it can be quite a lonely place. And I think it's important for me to show that kind of vulnerability so that might help people. I feel quite strongly about social media in general, not just in the business world, whereby it scares me how like false a lot of it is. It scares me to bring a child up in this world. My daughter's 11, incredibly impressionable age, just kind of saying, can I have Instagram? It's that, and yeah, you can have Instagram, but it's not real. Or if it is real, it is the highlights of somebody's life, and don't ever forget that. So I guess in answer to your question, what I wanted to do in LinkedIn is say, right, okay, this week I've had a massive win. I've landed this client and the fee's amazing. And then the week after, do you know what? I'm feeling really down because I'm traveling to an event and this client's waiting for work and I've got this guilt trip. Well, I enjoy putting that into words. I think probably something I haven't really spoke about before is the fact that there is a little bit of a selfish good deed there as well. Because if you can imagine in 5 years' time, what I'm doing is creating a diary. So I'm like blogging, in effect, a little diary of LinkedIn. And there is a post, I think I put it out on like New Year's Day, and it like flicks through all the posts throughout the year really quick, like on fast speed. And I got really emotional watching it back because it triggers things in, like, you go back to the place that you were at. It's like seeing a photograph and you're like, wow, that happened. And now I've overcome that. And look at me now. And it's a diary in effect. That's the way I see it.
I love that. I think that's really important to kind of see it as, isn't it? And
Yeah, but you only get that value of looking back if you're genuine.
That's true.
There's so many fake people do, like so many, especially on LinkedIn and Instagram, where they're putting on this front to the world. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, that means that there's going to be no value in looking back at those posts, because it's no different. Like, it'll be like the Coca-Cola marketing team looking back at all their adverts for the last 10 years. There's no emotion connection there. But yeah, no, if you've that shows how genuine your posts are, because it is emotional to look back and reflect on that. Whereas if you were posting rubbish, as it were, and made up stories, then you wouldn't trigger that.
You wouldn't have that. No, you're totally right. I've never thought about it like that. But yeah, you're totally right. That is why I got emotional about it, because that is my real life.
Yeah, 100%. So what, with you now, you've achieved so much in a short amount of time, especially in your practice, right? What's your next couple of goals? What would you love to say in 5 years' time, whatever time frame you want to put it, and just put that flag in the ground and say, that's my ultimate goal.
I really struggle with this question.
So do I.
I really struggle.
I can't answer it either, so.
It's interesting. My mum, right? She passed away 3 years ago now, but she, for my whole of my life, and my dad always still tries to structure his life by it. She had a 1 year, 2 year, and a 5 year goal at all times.
Wow.
At all times. Sometimes they were work orientated. Other times they were family life orientated.
Yeah.
We're going to go on this holiday. We're going to do that. Whatever it was. And then I'm sat there and people say, "What are you doing? What's your next step?" And I'm like, the only objective I've got from my business, and I've always had, is it allows me to maintain the lifestyle I want to lead at the time that I'm leading it.
Yeah.
Now that changes.
Yeah.
When I went into business 5 years ago, on my own, I was single, 33. No, I wasn't. That's a lie. I was 28, single, and a dog. Yeah. All I needed was about 20 grand a year income, because I had a really basic lifestyle. I lived in rural Scotland. I just spent my days walking with the dog and just chilling out. And that was all I needed. Now that's changed over 5 years as to what I need to maintain my lifestyle. I'm now married. We've got a house with a mortgage. I was renting at the time, and that, whenever someone says, "So what's next?" I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm open to every opportunity.
And I think one point I can pull out from that's fundamental to me struggling with that question is the other side of life. You can predict a business. I can do projections. I'm an accountant, but what's going to happen in personal life? And I think what you've just kind of identified there is really important. It's the time of your life where you start the business has a fundamental effect on whether you can do that set planning. I started the business. I have a child who would have been 7, 8 at the time. I live on my own with that child. I have a mortgage to pay. However, I did know the bare minimum I needed to live on, and it wasn't a lot of money. Now, some people, including my dad, what on earth are you doing? You've just given up a well-paid job. You've got a mortgage. You live on your own with a child. You crazy. Again, much to my dad's dismay, seems to be most of the decisions I make, but more fool him now, and I'm earning more than I've ever earned. But my point being, some people looked at that decision and went, "You're crazy." But other people could see what I was doing and go, "Oh my gosh, you're going to be able to do the school runs. You're going to be able to do the flexibility." I've worked until 2 a.m. so many times, and past 2 a.m. at times, so that I could have that 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And that has changed my life, and it's changed her life. And it's such an important thing to me. She goes to high school this year. Right? Where does that leave me? No more school runs. She's going to get on a bus. She's going to have a house key. So for me, that is going to pivot where the business now goes, because all of a sudden, and it might only be half an hour to an hour either side of some of the days of the week, but that has a fundamental impact. So that's going to have huge consequences in the business. So I really struggle with the 5 year plan. And I can't really answer the question in honesty, Aaron, because who knows what's going to happen financially. You know, if I end up living with somebody else again, then that changes everything, because then the pressure's off. Yeah, I'd still want to grow the business, but I wouldn't have to necessarily be the only one with the income. So it's all the personal
and your
stuff.
priorities
Really.
are changing.
Exactly.
Yeah, like when I met Claire, my wife, like up until that point, I would happily have every night on the sofa watching crap on TV, working on the laptop. But all of a sudden, I wanted to be able to go on holidays and city breaks with her and do whatever we want to do. And that then dictated what my business needed to achieve.
Yeah.
And yes, you might not need as much money necessarily from a day-to-day point of living, but actually you've got someone else to spend time with.
It makes sense.
And sometimes that will involve spending more money.
Yeah.
Other times it will be I just actually want a few hours to go for a walk with the dog and that person in my life. Like it's so unquantifiable.
Yeah.
But and a lot of people that have these 1, 2, 5 years. I mean, my mum was very adaptable with it. She was never upset if she didn't get there, but she held herself to account at the same time. But a lot of people are just so blinkered. This is my 5-year plan.
Yeah.
That's what my business plan says.
Yeah.
So they get opportunities like Sage coming to you.
Yes, exactly.
Like when you set up your business, if you followed your 5-year business plan that was written out on a bit of paper, which I've never had.
Yeah.
If Sage wasn't listed as a speaking opportunity there, you could have missed that.
Exactly.
And everything you've done since wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it does work for some people, and some people need that. But for me, I think I would suffer more if I'd set the goal and then didn't get there.
Yep.
But I really like what you said about your mother's not being necessarily all work focused. I think that would be more realistic to me if I was ever going to do it, to have that vision board piece, for it not all to be combined.
Take the daughter away.
Exactly.
Here, go and do this experience.
Yeah.
And I think, you've been explaining today how it's all about honesty and personal branding. And the fact that you couldn't answer that question just proves that, right? You honestly, you're like, anyone could have said anything. We would have hoped for a nice little clickbait of, well, I want to be a QuickBooks only practice in X amount of years, But no, you've honestly been saying, look, you don't know, and that's fine. So I think we always end this, don't we, on trying to let our guest explain some tips or give advice and give tips to anyone out there who's looking to have their own firm or accountant. What would be your number one tip if you had to start again? What would be the one thing that you just have to make sure is done?
I would say make sure the foundations are in place before you start building. It's like building a house, literally. You need to make sure those foundations are in place with practice management software, with just the basics. I think it can be quite tempting to try and run before you can walk. Thought I'd got that the wrong way around then. But it is very important to get the foundations in place first. And I would say speak to people that have done it. We are such a friendly industry now. We used to glare at each other on the street. If the accountant down the road said hello to you, you give them dead eyes. But now we all chat. Look at us sat here now. Yep. So come and ask us, get your answers and roll with it.
Amazing advice.
What, other than software, getting that right, is there anything else you would say constitutes to the foundations of that business?
I would say remember why you're doing it. So that's a tip that I would always give. Write down on the day that you start your business or when you're planning to start your business, the reasons that you are stepping out of employment and into self-employment, because I lost my way with that a little bit at one point, and actually my daughter was looking at the back of my head because I was on my laptop all evening, every evening, and I thought, hold on a minute, nah, this isn't what happened. And I actually physically got the list out when I was doing pros and cons of starting my own business, and I looked at it and I cried because I was like, wow, what did I do? And it was only the space of a month that I'd been working, but I was like, no, this is not why I did this. So I think that's really important. Remember the why and what you do.
Definitely.
Sam, this is your opportunity. Plug some more. Where can people find you? Where else can they hear stories like this? Go for it.
Thank you. So on LinkedIn, Samantha Mitcham. I believe there is only one Samantha Mitcham on LinkedIn, so you can't really go wrong. I've said that now, haven't I? And there's going to be loads of them. I'm pretty sure there's only one. Instagram and Facebook wise, my personal profiles are locked down for personal life, so it's the business pages on those. Insta and Facebook is SJCM Accountancy. But yeah, on LinkedIn, Samantha Mitcham.
Love it. And near enough every conference there is, there'll be normally a place to go and see you. And we would highly recommend it, wouldn't we, Jan?
Thank you.
Brilliant. And that has been it. This has been Ask the Accountant. We have cool friends. And again, we've had the coolest of cool friends today. So if you want to catch us at any point, then remember we go live on 8:30 a.m. on every Monday morning. And we'd love to see you there. So Sam, thank you again for giving up your time. Hopefully you enjoyed Digital Accounting Show yesterday, and thank you. And hopefully we'll get you on again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers.